guys, good to be here. Suburbs, welcome aboard. It is Veterans Day. My good friend over there at Torn Stage Studios for the awesome bumper music. You touch Torn Stage on YouTube tonight. I have a good friend of mine tonight is Peter Kush. Say hi, Peter.
Hello out there in Radio Land.
Oh yeah. So tonight, Peter and I, just like the video says, we want to talk about the municipal elections. Let's see if I can get that one out. That happened in Worcester last Tuesday, a week from today, actually, and it was, I believe, a 22% turnout, the most in 10 years. And
which is sad. Which is
still sad out of the 110 plus thousand registered voters. But yeah, people like to complain a lot during the year, and then when it shows up, every 2 years to actually fix those complaints, people are nowhere to be found. But before we get into that, my condolences to Peter, who is a Toronto Blue Jays fan. Who took the Dodgers to the limit a couple of weeks ago. Just real quick, any reflections on that, Pete?
It was a wild ride. I had the privilege of going up and seeing Game 1 in Toronto. My wife was good enough to go along with me as I don't know if I should say on the radio how much I spent, but it was about $1,200 per ticket.
Yep.
Went up there and had an absolute blast. It was a great ride, and it sucks they lost, but you know what? It was an experience, and I wish they won it. They had their shots, they had their opportunities, and sometimes the better team doesn't win, because I honestly thought Toronto was the better team most of that series.
Yeah.
And it sucks, but hey, it was a lot of fun. I had a great time in Toronto, and the team. See what they do with Bichette in the offseason, but most of the team looks like it's going to be back. You're going to have Gosman, Bassett, all those boys are coming back. So
yep. I mean, as long as if you've got the money, we've got the time, right?
I know. Well, did you see the MLB release report that some MLB teams lost billions of dollars last season, with the Mets being responsible for like 1 point something billion of those dollars?
So speaking of losses, so I know that are you talking free agent signings or
revenues? I guess for the league wide went down, but I guess the Mets. It just flipped up on my phone like literally minutes before so I haven't actually had time to research it. So I probably should have thrown it out there, but I thought it was funny that of course it's a New York team that's screwing up the deficit in the MLB, because that's what we need.
Yeah, but right. I mean, some teams, I don't know. They're throwing money at guys out there. I look at the Dodgers and I just said, Freddie Freeman was a Brave. I mean, there's just no homegrown, baseball teams anymore. It's a money game, and I think it was even one of the Kelsey brothers who came out and. Not Travis, his brother Jason, said it was on. I don't know if it's real or not, but he said baseball sucks. That's all they do is buy championships, and it dilutes the sport. And it's a different comparison, because football, you don't play for the Super Bowl in a 7-game set. It's just impossible. Right. So. But I get what they're saying.
And I do think, and I know we want to get mostly to election stuff, so I don't want to get too heavy into baseball. I think the Dodgers are an outlier. I mean, I think there is a problem with spending. The fact that any time you have one of these pitchers from, Japan coming over and posting, and teams looking at what the posting fee costs, or, free agents coming up just through the U.S. system, the first 2-3 teams that get mentioned are always the Dodgers, the Yankees, and the Mets. Mm-hmm. So I think there's definitely a problem with that. But there's also a problem on the other end too. There are teams that just need to spend. The fact that you have Pittsburgh, teams like Pittsburgh who just don't, Kansas City, who just don't spend. Like, I know people like said, this is a whole David versus Goliath situation between Toronto and LA, but the reality was Toronto, I think, was 6th or 7th overall in Major League Baseball in payroll. They're not a small market. They have one of the richest owners in baseball with Rogers Communication. They have money to spend, and they do spend money.
And the heck with the money. They were a good friggin' team. No one expected Toronto to they held first place pretty much all year. I mean, and then it was after, I believe, the All-Star break and the Blue Jays, Red Sox were making a climb. That was never going to happen. That's just all the hype of the sport during July and August and September. But there was no way Toronto was giving up number one. And they, look, they proved it. But and I get, we want to get onto the election, so real quick. But I will say, this is the one World Series where home field advantage didn't mean anything, right? The Dodgers lost 2 at home, and Toronto lost 2 at home, right?
Lost 3 at home.
Okay, well, yeah, but in those when they were switching in between game 1 and 2. And I think I think there's a lot of irony in this. So the last time there was a repeat in the World Series was Toronto, right? And then the Dodgers did it. Or I think the Yankees did.
It was the Yankees.
Yeah, of course, the Yankees. That's a good the empty go to your choke bag. There's a good way to end it. But we'll see what happens next year, right?
Yeah, it's always a new year, and like I said, it's the most overrated day in sports, the sports calendar, but it's also still one of the best. Is opening day in Major League Baseball. It's one of 162 games, but for that one day, all those franchises feel just an eensy-weensy bit of hope. So we'll see everybody in spring training, and then we'll just do it all over again.
Yeah, we'll see you in spring training, and then we'll see you at Pittsburgh. After the first 10 games when you're 1-9.
Yeah, well, spend money. I mean, with revenue sharing, there's no reason why a team should not be spending, because that's the thing. There's no emphasis or reason that teams need to spend money, because they're always going to make money, so they don't care. But conversation for the day, I'm sure.
Absolutely, man. So, all right. So, I know we talked before. You've run for city council before, and my shock. I went through the municipal election of Worcester for last week, November 4th, and I went through everybody who's running for mayor, everybody who's running city councilor at large, District 1, District 2, District 3, District 4, District 5. Then we got into the school committee, which I got to be honest with you, that's a bear I don't tackle, because I am not going to. My show is more about economic development, and that the school committee is a little bit. Yeah.
Although Ken, I will say, and I agree with you. I know school committee is not the sexiest topic for anybody, but I will say, what is the number one biggest budget item in the city of Worcester?
Yeah, absolutely. I understand. Yeah, I understand. Yeah, it is. I mean, that's why it's its own. Look, the school department has its own HR department. They have they're like a city unto themselves. So, but as far as the day-to-day constituents that are in the districts, and the at-large councilors, that's what we like to focus on. So people can go and look at school committee and who's done what, and to be honest with you, that's not where I focus my attention on. For the last as I said in the narrative and a little preamble, if you will, before, and on the YouTube channel, that Worcester's had itself a really interesting year as far as sticking its nose into, and maybe that's the wrong words, but in the national politics that were a major distraction. The divide, the whole gender, non-binary issue within the councils, accusing other councils of this and that. We had the back in May 4th or 5th over with Hygeia, Council Hygeia's district with ICE, and the councilor being called into court because of putting her hands on a police officer. So now we have a total changing of the guard, and So of course Petty's still mayor, right? 8 years. I guess he's kind of the glue. He holds all those hotheads together. Um, and and then we have the councils at large, and then the
No,
district.
eight terms. He's been there 16 years.
16 years. So
16 years, 8 terms.
So your takeaway on, first of all, uh, we got the mayor down, but just to let people know, Edson Montero, Joe Petty, Christian King, um, Sarkadoya, Daya, I can't pronounce the person's name. But they all ran for mayor. Petty, of course, won. It's a popularity contest. And then we get into the city councilors at large. What was your take on that?
So the at-large counselors, I was, I was flipping through, I was watching come through the night, and we were getting down to the wire, and Donna Calorio was clearly going to be, she was fading. She and Bergman started fading once they kind of got out of, some of those earlier districts, which I think they were counting around, 1-1, 1-5 early off, and then they started kind of fading as they started moving into other parts of the city. Mm-hmm. And there was a minute you were watching it, a hot minute, and you're like, oh, wow, Mo Bergman might actually lose. Because like we talked about, Mo is the guy who, he has a very specific base he supports and supports him. And he's never a big vote getter. He's always kind of on that, on that threshold, on that precipice of losing. But he always seems to just get just enough votes to skate by. It's like Lyndon Johnson won a bunch of close races early off in his career, and he got the nickname Landslide Lyndon.
Yeah,
and it's very similar with Bergman. He's always, except for the first term he won, because remember he lost 4 years prior to him winning. In the year I ran, he won. And that was, I think, his best showing. And ever since then, he's always been around that 4 to 6. He's always kind of in that lower half of the at-large counselors. And I thought he was gonna, maybe fall off. I will say, looking at both the district and the at-large races, it was kind of weird because it was very almost bipolar. Because you lost the most conservative counselor, but then you also lost the most liberal counselor. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of, it was very, and I have theories which you and I could talk about a little bit later of why that happened.
So define, just for the interruption, but who was the most conservative and who was the most liberal?
Well, I think Attell was the most liberal, and Donna Calorio was probably the most conservative, at least on record. I think Mo Bergman has a lot of very conservative votes and conservative tendencies on the council. But I think Donna is the face of the Republican Party of Worcester. Now that Mike Gaffney moved out, Donna kind of took over that, Connie Luke's, Mike Gaffney kind of face for the Republican Party.
No doubt about that. And then but do you think that, in your opinion, you think Attell is? So let's talk about the couple of 2 or 3 people that didn't run again. George Russell, Councilor Nguyen, right?
Yeah.
They, and Jenny Pasillo.
Something like that, yeah.
And George Russell was probably, I've watched a lot of these council meetings, probably like, I am out of here. I'm done. Pasillo, she was a one-termer, did 2 years, probably saw the same thing that we all saw over the summer and said, who would want to do this? Who would want to go out? And you go back and you can watch it on demand, video on demand. Who would want to go out and leave their family at 7 o'clock at night and try to move the city forward and put up with this nonsense, this divisiveness? So we had Russell didn't run, Pasillo didn't run, Nguyen didn't run, right? So that vacated. So I always looked at Nguyen as more of a progressive liberal, more so than Attell.
True, but I think Attell was the force behind that. I think Councilor Nguyen was, I think they had their niche, but I think Attell was the more connected, kind of more. I mean, if you had to pick one, I would say Attell was probably the poster child for the liberal wing of
I get it.
the
Yep.
Worcester Party.
Yep.
And then I think there was a little bit of a, and I think they seem to work seamlessly, but then you have the whole Christian King thing where King is kind of etched his spot out as always second runner up in the mayor's race, but he's also kind of been there as one of the more liberal councilors. But Christian's kind of he'll be all set for a while. Something weird will have to happen for him to lose.
Well, we had one councilor at least that doesn't seem to want to go anywhere ever, or will not go anywhere. It was Kate Toomey, of course. The perennial at-large councilor. So who do we have now? We do. Let's just say there is a recount because of Mo Bergman. He's only a city council right now by 23 votes. So
yeah, but 23 votes. 20. I mean,
there's a recount though. There's a recount going on with between him, his campaign, and Jamal Kamara. She asked for a recount. So well, you don't know that the hanging Chad, Peter, the hanging Chad.
Yeah, but I mean, when I was in school, I did an internship with the city manager, city clerk, Dave Rushford, and the voting machines have changed a lot since then. In the past, historically in Worcester, a hand recount has only ever really changed in recent. This is recent. Have only changed between 5 and 6 votes. She's down about 26.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not. I think, and it's her right. And I'm not going to say don't do it because I get it. I get there's a lot of there's a lot of pressure on her, and there's from herself, but also again there's one woman left on city council, so I think she's getting a lot of pressure.
Wow.
But with that said, 26 votes are not going to appear. I would be very surprised if 26 votes appeared. I mean, the machines nowadays are these aren't the old punch ballot, draw lines across, punch holes in your ballot. I mean, these things are very high tech. They're very sophisticated machinery.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to find. I don't foresee them finding 26 ballots.
I don't either.
And it's going to cost the city a lot of money.
Well, right, probably over $100,000. But the fact of the matter is, it's due process. It's due process, right?
Right. It's her right, and we're not gonna. And the city has it in its bylaws where in a recount situation, if it's within the range, that the city will eat the fee on that. So I'm not gonna. And I do think, even though I don't think it should damage her reputation because it's within her rights, I do think that in the long run, unless she pulls this off with the recount, if she picks up 2 or 3 votes and it costs the city, an extra, $20,000 to $40,000 to put on this little hand recount. Because remember, there's 2 types of recounts they can do. They can run all the ballots through a machine, and that takes about an hour, and it costs the city like $5,000. Mm-hmm. Or they can do the full hand recount, which I think it usually takes between 3 and 5 days to complete the whole thing.
We'll just bring it into you, and the business unit can do it.
Yeah, exactly. We'll have Laurel sit there and
there you go, Laurel and Faria, right? But what I will say though, Peter, is this: I will say if you don't do a recount, forget the money, right? I think it's a statement. It's a statement saying that look, this guy has been there. I'm not going that easy, right? This guy has been there forever, right? And I could go home and say, well, he just beat me, and I could take all the statistics that you were just citing as far as always been a low vote getter and whatever, she just happened to be facing him for that 6th seat or whatever it was.
Right.
But I think it's smart of her. I think It sends a message to the voters who are going to vote in 2 years from now.
I don't. I think it's going to have the opposite effect with her. I think because she used to be on school committee. She was on school committee until she lost, and then she kind of threw a temper tantrum on social media, alleging racism and why she
Oh
didn't
yeah,
get
no, I saw
reelected.
that, but I'm not even saying that. I'm not talking about her. I'm not talking about the potential candidate in Kamara actually running. I'm talking about just a message to Bergman that
Oh,
the Sharks are circling, dude, and I mean, as far as I mean, I don't know between him, you got Christian King who never met a microphone he doesn't like. You got Mo Bergman who says like 5 words in every city council meeting. I'm going, whoa, where and so. But now let's switch over. So that's a contested campaign.
yep.
So the people who won and took on the incumbents and won. What are your thoughts? So start with District 5.
So District 5 was, and these are the numbers I've really been looking at. And this was the one that I thought could go either way. I was leaning towards Jose early off, and then I kind of started fading Jose, and then I thought, you had the whole thing with Eureka Street, where Councilor G was arrested for assault on a police officer. Um, so I think uh, I'm not surprised. The numbers also didn't. The numbers were weird because it's almost like the numbers didn't change as much as I thought they would. His numbers didn't really go up as much as I thought they would. If anything, her numbers kind of just went down. So her base didn't seem overly excited to come out. And historically, where she would have done well, if I could just pull this up on my computer, if I could find it, so historically, she would have really done well out of the nines, which are like 9-6, 9-5, 9-4, which she did pretty well, except the 9-6, which is kind of deeper Tatnick, going up to the Paxton line,
Now
where
you're talking
he made some
precincts.
big inroads, and that seemed to be the one that really flipped it for him. Was when he flipped kind of that 9-6, and then it remained very close in kind of Webster Square in Webster Square Towers. And so it seems like her numbers kind of went down and his numbers kind of went up. And that seems why. So it kind of reminds me almost like the Barbara Haller race against Soraya Rivera, where it's almost like her numbers just kind of went down, where Jose's numbers went up a little bit, but were mostly stagnant.
Yeah, well, yeah, I remember that. That's because she sold Downing Street.
Yes, I always find that funny because you had and again, this is way old elections. You had a bunch of very old conservative white people who were upset and didn't show up to vote because Barbara Haller arranged the sale of Downing Street to Clark University. So they stayed home and voted, and then they got a Latina city councilor for the next decade.
I know, Jesus. Oh, development. So,
I know.
but with Attell, like as someone said it on the radio, on this week in Worcester with Hank Stoltz, and Hank said it well, that she was running against two people. She was running against Jose Rivera, but she was also running against herself, and so she had like three people. She had herself, and then she had her other self, which was the Eureka. And I think people, I don't know. I think for me, she'll be back. She's only 45 years old. She'll be back. Maybe she'll run at large or something. But I think. But I will tell you though, these replacements, dude, are like just throwbacks. So let's move on. District 2. So let's just wrap that up for people who don't know. So Jose did win District 5, and I think Attell held that district for what?
Two terms, 4 years.
Yeah, 4 years. So Jose's in. Go knock him out, buddy. Okay, so let's look at District 2. What are you thinking there? We're looking at Carrie Mello Carlson's district, and she's been entrenched there for a while, right? Incumbent.
Yep.
And
So with this race, I will say I want to give props to Rob Bellata, because I think Rob Bellata did it really well. I think a lot of people lose, myself included, you kind of lose the city council race, and then you kind of just have a moment of reflection where you're like, I was fucking crazy for running in the first place. And you kind of sink into the shadows for a while. Mm-hmm. And I think with Rob did a great job of really running a 4-year campaign. I think when he lost 2 years ago to Candy, I think he kind of realized it was an uphill battle, and he was really digging himself in for 2 campaigns. Mm-hmm. And he made a lot of good connections the first time out, and then he kind of came back this year for kind of the knockout punch. And like I said, you lost conservative counselors like Donna Colorio, and Candy was kind of on the conservative end too. Mm-hmm. But then you also lost progressive. And I think it was really the districts voting not along endorsements or not along party lines, even though we don't use parties in Worcester elections. I mean, the whispers are there. We all know where people kind of fall politically. And I think with Candy had the same problem that Attell had, where, and you saw Josh Smith had way back when in District 1, mm-hmm. Where she became so much about, business, and so, and I think the voters of the districts felt that they and the constituent services were not there, and I think they saw her as a business first candidate. And they did not see her. I mean, I saw countless letters to the paper, countless comments on Facebook pages saying, I reached out to Candy. Candy didn't get back to me. I mean, constituent services are one of the most basic, especially if you're a district counselor. Mm-hmm. It's one of the most important, one of the most basic but important things. Because if you don't respond to your constituents aren't going to vote for you. Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of where Candy fell. And I think Attell, it was the same thing. I think Attell, she wanted to get so much into national politics, which, again, I think she cared about it. Don't get me wrong. Mm-hmm. But I think she basically said at one point during the DPW, I'm not a customer service representative for the DPW. It's like, yeah, you are. You're a district counselor. That's your job. Yeah. And I think it's the same thing with Candy. I think Candy got out of touch with a lot of her district, and constituent services kind of went downhill. Yeah. And I think that, it cost her. I think people felt like they couldn't go to her, and she wasn't trustworthy. She wasn't dependable. And I think it caused her to lose, which, again, I know you're a big Candy supporter. I was not. I was much over the Candy Carlson experiment.
I just think that a lot of it's not that I'm a big supporter. I mean, the woman couldn't. I met her 100 times. She never remembered my name.
Constituent services, Ken. I remember, and let me just, and I'll let you get on with your thing. But John Benenda used to go to every funeral of anybody who died in his district. He would write letters to every single freaking person who graduated high school. He was so sharp politically. And then you take someone like Candy, who can't even remember your name after meeting you 300 times.
I know.
And you wonder why she lost.
I know. And I don't fall into the, well, I meet a lot of people every year. I'm like, I work at a place where I meet hundreds of people a year. Okay. And I will pull up your name somehow. And we had a meeting a couple of weeks ago before she was enthroned, and I was a little put off by that. So yeah, I support her only because I think she got sucked into, there's more commercial business in her district than residents. I mean, you got Lower Lincoln Street and trying to do all this development in Lower Lincoln Street. I get it. It's probably, but for any councilor that takes that district, it's probably one of the toughest districts to balance between, digging a hole and putting breaking ground with Joe Petty and all the other guys to, Candy, my sidewalk hasn't been plowed for a week. You know what I mean? I'm not a counselor, so I can't speak to the delicate balances between constituent services but a tell in District 5, you got to admit that's mostly residential. You got plazas and things like that, but she's dealing with until she's gone, mostly residential, you know, concerns. I think, but Candy, that could be it. And let's just say too, she only got like 1,500 votes. You know,
Yeah.
Candy did not get a lot of votes. She got beat by in Worcester. She got beat by like 500
She
votes.
got walloped.
She got she got walloped.
She was done. She was when the polls first started coming in. And her district is always going to be a low, like you said. There is a lot of business. It is a lower vote district, but once it hit like 840, and I'm looking at the numbers, I'm like, she's done.
Yeah.
Like until that race didn't probably wrap up until after like 9:30, 10. By like 8:30, 8:40, I'm like, she's cooked. There's no way she can't find these votes. There's no votes out there to find.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And again, I think Bellotta did a really good job in 4 years of just building up, this base. And, kudos to him. He ran a great campaign. And also, we don't have to, it's not all, oh, poor, excuse me, poor Candy. Candy's husband is the freaking president of the AFL-CIO. I mean, she's got plenty of connections.
Mm-hmm.
Like this, and I do think at some point that kind of backfires on you too. When you drive by and see all her visibilities, when you do the Gary Rosen thing and stand on a street corner, they're all hired guns. They're all AFL-CIO union laborers. They're not average people in the district. Like,
sure.
Say what you will about standing on a street corner with a sign, but all those people, they could care less about the race. Their bosses just told them to show up, so they showed up for a couple hours.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. So speaking of that, standing on a street corner, I want to go back to at large real quick. Sata Mitra, Sata B. Mitra. What do you know about him?
Well,
I've seen him standing on street corners himself, and I remember I've been listening to him for many years now on AM radio. He's a tax expert, knows money, which I know can get fuzzy when you're running a campaign and you're wondering where you get your money from. But a new at-large counselor, he wants to help homeless and he wants to help Worcester with its financial responsibilities. So that's what I've heard.
Yeah, I mean, he's been around for a while. He's been on a lot of boards, a lot of committees. I will say I do have a few red flags on him. Number one is that most of his money came in large donations from outside the city of Worcester, which is a huge red flag for me because as someone who ran for council, who raised money, and it was pretty decent at raising money, it's really hard to raise money from outside the city of Worcester because you have to, unless you have a lot of friends from outside of Worcester, you're talking about asking somebody to invest in a weak city councilor, because it is a weak city council style of government. And there are a lot of red flags with me with that because I'm like, where's this money coming from? Why are people investing in him as a city councilor? Are there plans to groom him for higher office? Is he going to just be a shill for outside interests? Because Worcester's been bitten a lot about getting money from outside interests. I mean, look at Polar Park. By the way, I think you want me to drink on Polar Park at some point because it's going to run a deficit for another year.
I know. I know.
But he's aware, and that race. It also does concern me that he has a lot of plans, but a lot of them sound weird. I mean, he talks about wanting to care for the homeless, but his whole homeless strategy basically involves like forced labor. Like he basically said he wants to bring back the poor farm, which used to be where on the other side of where Great Brook Valley was. Mm-hmm. He talked these. You make it sound like it's compulsory to if you're homeless that you can live in these like small communities and you have to work on a farm. I mean, it's not. We don't want to go back to the poor farm, and that's
no. And I don't want to sound, racial with this or whatever, but even like Attell's from Albania, I believe. We have people that are running for city council now and districts that, at large districts or whatever, that are from different backgrounds, particularly Mitra. I do not know in terms of, I think he's an Indian descent, um, you know, and we have a large Indian population in Shrewsbury. Who knows? I mean, maybe, I don't even know where this gentleman lives. It does say he lives it says he lives here at,
I think he's on the west side.
yeah, 6 Westport Road. So, yeah, it doesn't sound like it's next to Piedmont Street, but
No.
but who knows? His money could abutting towns, because of cultural likenesses, be supporting counselors within Worcester, because Worcester is developing 200,000 plus and this and growing, and with it, is it in town's best interest to the abutting towns to throw some money to someone that they know to get them in there to help influence their position? I don't know. I do know that Shrewsbury, and the large Indian population that lives in Shrewsbury, works at UMass, very influential, on that side of Worcester. So just saying, when you mention that money, and I do not think that he raised money inappropriately. Don't get me wrong. Of course not.
I'm not accusing of raising money inappropriate. I'm just saying that it's always a red flag for me, at least, when I do see when I do see money coming in from out of city, because it's not the city council is not set up in a way where it's a good investment unless there's plans down the road for him to do something, down the road.
Yeah.
Then I could see it, but.
Yeah.
But I don't know much. I don't know much about him. I'm curious of how it'll go. Again, I think his homelessness plan is weird and maybe inhumane.
And I'll read up on that. But again, who knows, dude? I do not know. Again, culturally, we have different cultures in this country that immigrate here. That they bring their own set of beliefs and customs and things. So, I mean, we'll see. But right now, as of January, correct, he'll be sworn in, and that will do that. So let's move on. One more. Let me throw this comb into the race again. Who do you think I'm talking to?
Well, it's inevitable. I mean, there will come a day when Gary Rosen will pass away, and a lot of people forget about Gary.
Dude, I still have a comb. I swear to God, I can produce the comb right now.
Yeah. Well, again, Gary, and this gets back to constituent services. Honestly, I think a lot of this whole election kind of boils down to like a bigger national, where people want to feel like their politicians represent them. And Gary, as much as I disagree with a good number of Gary's policies, especially on city taxes and pilot program and things like that, I will say Gary is, for an at-large councilor, Gary, and for a long time, Gary was a district councilor. Gary beat Bill Eddy way back when it was a District 5 councilor before Attell. So, he acts like a district councilor. His constituent services are top-notch. He remembers people's names. He remembers, tidbits about people. Gary is a throwback politician.